Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, mori mori wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Rishma Govani. She is here to celebrate sushi and samosas. Before we invite Rishma into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by The Secret Science of Sports, the math, physics, and mechanical engineering behind every grand slam, triple action, and penalty kick. A fantastic book written by our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson. Why does a football spiral? How do some athletes jump so high? The answer is science. The Secret Science of Sports helps kids better understand concepts of science, technology, engineering, and math through the sports they love to play and watch. What a fantastic book to add to your family library now, just weeks before the Winter Olympics are about to begin. Imagine the conversations about science that you can have with your kids as you're watching the ski jump competition or the figure skating competition or the hockey tournament. It's going to bring a lot of fun to your family. The book is fantastic. You know, our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, she is a fantastic writer who really brings STEM alive and sparks kids' imagination. Do yourself a favor. Add The Secret Science of Sports by Jennifer Swanson to your family library today. Join us right now from Toronto and Ontario in the beautiful nation of Canada. Our guest is here today to help remind us how beautiful our world is. Please welcome to the show the author of Sushi and Samosas, Rishma Govani. Hey, Rishma, how are you?
I'm so great. I'm so happy to be here. What a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Judd.
I'm delighted to have you here. I'm looking at your home, and in the background, I see a picture of, I think, the Taj Mahal and a statue and a beautiful globe. And so you're definitely in love with the world.
I'm totally in love with the world. The world is such a gorgeous place. The world is so big and so diverse. And I've done a fair bit of traveling, but you know what? There's so much more to discover, right? Like there's so many places that I haven't been, even if I check off my list and look at the places that I have been. But yeah, the world is fascinating. And I think, for you, for me, for our families and for the next gen, it's theirs to discover. That the world is wide open.
Yeah. My beautiful wife and I were out for dinner with my cousin last night, and we were just kind of talking over our travels. And my cousin has a summer home in Prince Edward Island, which is another beautiful part of the world. But that's the extent of her travel. And so when my wife and I were talking about our trips to Panama and Costa Rica and my wife's trip to Estonia and Finland, my cousin just sat there and shook her head. She's like, "Oh, no, I'm not that brave. I couldn't go to all these wild places." And I'm thinking to myself going, boy, there's a lot more wilder places for me to travel to than I've already been. This is, Panama and Costa Rica, it's just scratching the surface.
Well, all four of those countries that you just mentioned are ones that I haven't gone to, and it made me literally salivate. I was like, oh, always been on the list and just haven't gotten there yet. And, wish I did more of it even when I was younger. And I did a fair bit. And I just, look forward to all the adventures ahead of myself and my family's life. But, you don't always have to get on a plane to travel. There are other ways to travel. You can travel through books. Mm-hmm. You can read about places. You can be transported through movies, foreign movies and shows and literature and music. And what are we here to talk about today? You can be transported. You could be an international world citizen in the comfort of your own home, in the comfort of your neighborhood or your local city, through food. I think food is a great way to travel around the world, and you don't have really a need for a passport, vaccine, or otherwise needed to do that.
Yeah. So tell us about Sushi and Samosas.
Sushi and Samosas is a children's book. The tagline is a trip of tasty transformations. And the book revolves around two very reluctant children who are really hesitant to try new foods. And their parents are foodies and have been around the block and really like to experiment and try new foods. And the kids have a staple diet of chicken nuggets and fries. That's what they want to have. That's their diet. And through this book, the parents are trying to expose them to different cultures and cuisines. They try to have a taco night and, a Mexican theme at home, which is really popular, right? Tuesday taco night and a lot of families' homes. They go to food trucks. They go to different restaurants. They go to people's houses where different cuisine and food is presented. And each time, they encourage their children to try. And their kids are full of, ew, gross, yucky, disgusting, never want to try that. And one of the refrains in the book is, the more you try, the more you fly. And the other one is, the more you know, the more you go, the more you know. And so, they're constantly trying to reinforce that messaging. And it really is about taking that one bite. And I say that maybe it takes even more than one bite. Sometimes it's two or three. Mm-hmm. Really get the flavor of something. And I think, the general rule for myself and maybe some other people out there is you don't have to like it, but you tried it. Mm-hmm. You've been exposed to it. So you took 1 or 2, 3 bites and you didn't like the texture. You didn't like the taste. Fine. Set it aside. But what you've done is embraced something, tried something. Instead of there being fear or hesitancy and you making up your mind and hating something before you even tried it. Mm-hmm. So we have all these preconceived notions and ideas, and it's like, but you got to get to know it before you make a determination. And then if you don't like it, okay, fine. So I'm constantly encouraging my kids, encouraging myself. I'm risk averse with certain things and smells, but I have to try it. I can't already come in with a fixed attitude and a made up mind without trying it. That's not fair. That's not fair to the people. It's not fair to the food itself.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really lucky, and I don't quite know how we did it. Both of my kids growing up they certainly loved chicken nuggets and mac and cheese, but they also, we were just talking the other day about my son. We're joking about it. He's 29 right now, but we're out to dinner with him and his wife, and we're talking about a time in a restaurant where the whole family was there, and the waitress came out to give him the children's menu when he was 5, and he said, "No, I'll have the filet." And everybody at the table just kind of dropped their forks, and I'm like, he wants a filet. Give him.
So, it's going to cost you more, right? It's just going to cost you more when that kid's menu is no longer present. I mean, that's great. That's really great to hear. I have a really, really fond memory when my husband and I are sushi people, and late in life. Mm-hmm. I have to admit that I wasn't exposed to it until quite later, and was, really stuck to, maybe avocado roll and cucumber roll. And over the years, I've gotten a little bit more into it. I can do sashimi. I actually love like white tuna. There's still a lot more, right? When you look at a sushi menu, it's so extensive. So there's definitely a lot more that I need to try. But I remember the kids who wouldn't even look at it. The idea was really gross to them. And when they took to sushi, I remember like feeling tearful, like misty eyed. Like we were so proud and excited and thought, here's the road, right? Like if they can start with a cucumber roll, this is going to change their life. Mm-hmm. Like really, I mean, it's such a small thing, but when you think about what it represents, it's a big thing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, both of us were misty eyed and just really excited and happy and emotional that, hey, yes, we won a huge battle here. Like our kids are going to have sushi. That's going to change the trajectory of their life. Like, when they're among their peers, when they're in university, when they travel, it is a common question. Do you like sushi? Do you eat sushi? Where are we going to eat today? Like you're with a new group of people. And when there's a certain reaction, I don't eat sushi. And it just changes the dynamics, mm-hmm. I think, of a group or how you see the world. Or have you really tried it? Because you're like really, really, really missing out. Yeah, the idea of seaweed is odd, right? It is odd. It's not something that North Americans or a lot of people, have as a staple in their diet. Once you get around it, you realize you don't even taste it. Mm-hmm. You don't actually taste the seaweed. And so that, yeah, what a phenomenal memory that you have and I have, and, lucky that we've had children, who've embraced things. But I have to say that, my children have also not embraced mm-hmm. other things. And that's a life lesson, I think, that will continue on, just like for myself. I'm not like, hey, give me everything. I'm still picky about certain things, but really the essence of, I think, what the book is and what we're trying to do in terms of the messaging is try it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Try it. Things will stir in your mind. It's more about your mind opening up and that you remain open to the world, right? Not just getting on a flight and flying somewhere. That, you have to go and embrace the culture. And you can do that here. Yeah. You can have friends from different cultures. Absolutely. Being in a city like Toronto or New York City or even Boston, you have a chance literally to, and especially in Toronto, you have a chance to travel all over the world in a week by going to all the different restaurants. I don't think there's a place on the world that you can't find food from in a place like Toronto. Absolutely. 20 years ago, and this is the genesis or the inspiration behind the book, I had a little dinner club, and it was called TFLC, which was Toronto Food Love Club. And its mission was to try a different cuisine once a month. And it started out really, really small, and it was inspired because I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time and had gone to a Burmese restaurant, which is Myanmar now, and just loved the experience. We got to know the owners, their history, how they came to the U.S., and I was like, I'm going to go back. When I move back to Toronto, I'm going to do this. And this club just kept growing. It got some media attention. And so it was friends and strangers, and we would try different cuisines. And we were going in little alleyways, and it was hard. It was hard to find like a little Somalian restaurant and Uzbekistan restaurant. Like there's maybe one or two of those, but they're very hard to find. They're not definitely on the subway grid for sure. You're going to need a car to get there. But what I wanted to say is that, yes, these big cities have them, but the small cities have them too now. Mm-hmm. And you know what, where that international cuisine is even in our grocery stores. Mm-hmm. Like things are more readily available. Like they used to be like an international aisle. And now like there still is, but there's also that food which has gone into sort of the mainstream aisles, mm-hmm. which is fascinating mm-hmm. in a very short period of time, right? Like in the last 5 years, 10 years ago, it was like a very dedicated aisle. But I think you can experiment with that stuff at home now. Yeah. And so that is also a great way to cook for yourselves, with your friends, with your partners, and with your children is try it out. Try different things. You can find samosas. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily recommend samosas from a frozen pack, but some of them are good, I mean, maybe that's a way to embrace a different type of cuisine, mm-hmm. Because it's fast and you can put it in the air fryer and try something. So I think even the smaller towns and cities are, getting just a lot more diverse these days. Yeah. And I love the fact that we can sit down with our kids. And again, Reading with Your Kids podcast is all about
talking with our kids, having conversations with our kids, and what kind of conversations can these books, these stories spur? And that's the same thing with food. What kind of conversations can we have as we're sitting down and trying sushi for the first time, or trying something new on the sushi dish menu, or trying, the first time we try to cook authentic Chinese food, and just sitting down and talking with our kids to help them understand that Chinese food, it's more than fried rice, and Chinese food is different in the different areas of China. It's such a big and vast nation that there are actually different customs and cultures throughout that country. And I think when we do that with our kids, we're really helping them understand the world better, and also understand the different opportunities that exist for them all around the world.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't even know if fried rice Chinese people would consider that, one of their dishes. It's Americanized, right, over the years. And, you bring up so many good points. And I think as much as it's relevant to our children, right, that's who we're trying to foster and prepare and for the real world. And the real world is big and it's diverse and it's full of all these people. But there's these stories and these conversations that revolve around food. It's a common theme. It's something that unites us, and it's a safe topic. I know my memory. I remember I was in Washington, D.C. I remember having my first sushi roll, and I was nervous. And I remember not knowing how to use chopsticks. I still probably don't use them correctly, but I know how to. I'm apt at them. I can use them. So everyone has a memory attached to that. The first time I had, right? So it's such a good conversation starter. And I think what it does is it unites us. So if I'm going to go and walk outside with my dog, and I mention that I had this particular Vietnamese soup, pho, pha, the correct pronunciation, I think, is that. And, and say, I don't really like it, or, I found it really sour, I found it really spicy. That gives an opportunity for someone, whether they're from that background or not, to be able to say, hey, where you should really try the pho is this place. Mm-hmm. Or what you need to do is, add more water to it, or whatever the recipe is or the trick is. And it's a conversation starter. You've already started. You have a common ground. You have a common basis to start a conversation. Now, the person who hasn't tried that food, you're not going to be connected in the same way. It's about connection. Mm-hmm. It's about human connection. So whether you liked it or not is almost irrelevant, because what it is that you were able to start a conversation with someone in the drugstore line, someone at your dentist's office, someone at your work place, someone outside in your neighborhood. And you mentioned that you had food at this place, or you tried this local restaurant. And then no doubt they're going to come back and say, you really need to try, the empanadas at this place. You've steered wrong. So I would give it another try and try it at this place. That's often what's said. People will often say, oh, that place isn't that good though. I wouldn't judge, that, Mexican food there. Where you really need to go is here, or go, if you ever really want to cook at home, go to this, particular grocery store, and you'll find these really fresh tortillas. It's such a conversation starter. It's such a water cooler topic. It's so safe, right?
Yeah.
And unifying. And look, now you have a connection with that neighbor, that person, that, stranger. You talked about something, and it was about food.
Yeah. And I think too, having these conversations with our kids, this is going to sound really crazy, and that's okay, because I am a bit crazy. But, we talk here on the podcast about helping our kids identify their feelings and, know that, the kid who's lashing out because they don't like the way they're feeling. Why not? I don't know. I just don't like, in helping them describe, well, are you sad? Whatever. I think that in a crazy way, this could help with those conversations, sitting down. What don't you like about this food? Just don't sit there and tell me it's gross. That's childish. What is it? Is it too salty? Is it too sour? Is it not sweet enough? And then helping them get into it to really kind of, what is it that I don't like about this? And identifying that, I think that can help them in, when it's time to identify emotion and when it's time to identify what they like to do and what they don't like to do. Just helping kids be more mindful and thoughtful. And also I think it's empowering to say to kids, what is it about this that you don't like? Asking them their opinion. I think that can be very empowering.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. You bring up, again, what a beautiful conversation we're having here. But it's about, it's being more specific, right? And when we're more specific in our language, we can get to the heart of it, right? Like, is there fear? Is there emotion? If it's salty or sweet, there's obviously a solution to that. You can add more sugar, more salt. But being specific with our emotions, being specific with, our taste, like these all lead to intimacy, right? Like getting to know one another a little bit better. And it goes back to like, even if you ask your kids, how was your day? You're going to get a very vague answer. But do you have a more specific question? Like, where did you guys eat lunch today? Because of COVID, were you guys in the hallway? Or how was math today? Did you figure out this problem? Being really involved as a parent, and interested in knowing what's happening. And so the vague questions are going to get vague answers.
Yeah. I forget who it was who gave me that piece of advice, but somebody very early on when my kids were babies said, don't ever ask your kids, how was the day? Ask them specifics. How was math class? What did you eat? What did you and Scotty do today at recess? Who did you play with at recess? Those get you answers. How was your day? Gets you,
Okay. Yeah. Like it's, even if you ask me, how was my day? A lot happens in my day. So my general answer is going to probably be a very boring answer. But if you ask me a more specific question, you're going to get a lot of stories along the way. And so, I think that's a tremendous way of parenting, and also just, even in friendships, be specific. Be specific about how was your morning? What do you like? Again, we're talking about getting to know one another. So you're being specific. I think food is very specific, right? Because it's like a specific item that you've encouraged your children, or yourself to try. It's not just Japanese food. That's really broad. So let's be more specific about it. Was it the wasabi, right? Was it this type of noodle? That's, where I think the conversations lie. And, this all goes back to diversity. And I read recently, and, I'm paraphrasing it, but it was just a really poignant quote about, we can teach our kids about racism. They learn about it at school. It's a very in vogue topic. It should always be in vogue, but right now, 2021, it's really, all about diversity and different movements. And you can talk about it. But where's the tangible, where's the actionable place to learn about this, right? You have to watch the movie. You have to try the food. You have to read the book. You can't just, we all know, okay, don't be racist and that's mean to say and that's not true. But behind that, there has to be something that's actionable. So diversity and inclusion and equality and equity and all those beautiful fancy words, they have to be tangible, right? We have to get to know one another. Food is a great way. This book is a great way to start to get to know one another. But I mentioned there's other ways, right? There's literature, there's beautiful movies, there's music, you learn a different African dance that's in vogue, and you do that on your TikTok, and, that's experiencing culture. That's the experience of culture, right? Exposing your kids. If you can't get on a plane and travel, and even if you do travel, you don't just stay in the resort. Well, of course I want to be poolside and beachside and have that experience. Not denying that. I do want that. But what's also important is that you complement that with the trip into town, and that you try something local, or you talk to a local person. And, even if it's on that, shuttle bus, that you're sitting closer to the driver and maybe trying to engage with him as opposed to taking a backseat and not really listening carefully to what that person is trying to tell you about their local country, going into the local market. There's nothing wrong with going to a resort. It's that, maybe try it a different way another time, or break up your trip, or one time do a resort and another time do something a little bit more experiential.
Yeah. One of the things that I do, no matter where I go, is visit the local supermarket. And it's incredible. It's, there's so many similarities, but there's so many differences. And it can be really, really fun.
Yeah, it's what a great way to put it too, right? Because there are differences. And then you find, but then there's common stuff, right? Like, oh, the chips are so inflated in price, or this guy's willing to haggle, or, this guy's like, I've seen this at home in my hometown, and this is 5 times the cost. This is a ripoff. Or maybe because import export, they can't get that particular item. So it is going to be 5 times the cost. But yeah, I love that. I think I need to do that more. Just go walk into a grocery store, right? Not walk into a store that's familiar, because there's a lot of like, okay, going to a Starbucks, it's going to be pretty similar. But I know even when I was in India and I was in my early 20s, and I loved it because we went to the McDonald's, and just looking at the menu and you think, we just went to McDonald's, it was cheap and cheerful. And their Big Mac was called Maharaja Mac, right? And it was made of lamb. And Maharaja, it's the same idea, Big Mac, but we don't think of it as the Mac Daddy. And Maharaja is just the king, the person you revere to. And I loved that name. It still makes me giggle. Yeah. That the Big Mac was called Maharaja Mac. It's just it's even more grand than a Big Mac, right? Because you're talking about a person, you're talking about like the king of the palace is having this. Yep. And so, you could do it that way too, right? Like just be exposed. There are, where were we? In Italy or somewhere else, there are different menus in different McDonald's, but yet McDonald's is almost comforting to a lot of kids because it's something that sounds familiar to them. But once you get there, they may not have a particular item on their menu.
Yeah. This has been a fascinating conversation. I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Sushi and Samosas and find out more about you.
So Sushi and Samosas is available Barnes & Noble, on Amazon, in Walmart, in Target, and in Canada, it's in our beautiful bookstore chain, which is called Chapters in Indigo. So look it up. It's Sushi and Samosas. My name is Rishma Govani. You can also find me on the wonderful web. I'm a very open person, and I really want to be part of the discourse and conversation around diversity and kids' diversity. And through writing this book, I'm finding there's so many sources and resources and different Instagram accounts that I've come across where, there are really dedicated people who are doing this. They talk about diversifying their bookshelves. They talk about diversifying your Christmas tree. And so, like, my one challenge, to the listeners out there is just try something new. Try it. Try it. If you can't try it every day, at least try it every week. Yep. Have those conversations, continue to try. Our palate changes. Maybe something that you didn't like 2 or 3 years ago, give it another go. I didn't like olives. For a long time, and I was determined to like olives. And it took me decades and decades, and I like olives now. Awesome. But it was changing. But you do change. Like your palate does change. And so that's where you can find the book. It's a great gift for holiday season, but it's an all year gift. It's good for schools and also classrooms if you want to donate it to your local school, library, or classroom, and do a read along. And I'm open, and I hope you guys remain open to not only the book, but to the world outside. Yeah.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Sushi and Samosas, Rishma Govani. Hey, Rishma, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I loved the chat. It was fantastic.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Jessie Human. She'll be here to celebrate What's Today For. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, if you haven't done so already, we would really love it if you would connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, @readingwithyourkids on Instagram, @JedleyMagic on Twitter. We'd also love it if you could visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Parents, you can sign up for our free newsletter and also learn how you can bring our totally interactive live event to your community. Authors, be sure to click the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to find out how we can celebrate your book to our thousands and thousands and thousands of listeners and followers here on the podcast and across social media. And everybody is welcome to use the contact button on readingwithyourkids.com to send us a message, a suggestion, or just an attaboy. We love attaboys. We would love to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guests, Rishma Govani. Please be sure to check out Sushi and Samosas. Also want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.